At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESINet goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and a big shout out to NENA, the National Emergency Number Association, for hooking us up, for presenting and hosting us here once again at the conference. Again, this is the 2021 National NENA Conference. We're currently in the Expo Hall right now. This is the last day of the Expo Hall, and we are right by the Innovation Theater. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different sessions. Looks like Motorola and Carbine are going up right now. Once again, we're sponsored here by InDigital and Rapid Deploy, and a big thanks to patrons. Thank you so very much for everything. Appreciate it more than you know. And we are about to get started here with an episode, and I'm excited. We were talking at a spot yesterday about doing an episode, and just talking with you already. I'm like, man, we could have been coworkers. Like, this is fun. So my guest today is Jessica. She's with Marshall County 911 out of Kentucky. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We were all at the same place last night, and what's funny is, sometimes it's fun to people watch, right? And sometimes there are characters in a spot where there are a bunch of people, and they're the ones that just kind of stand out. You're like, is this real life? Is this really going on? But it's always a lot of fun. It's so much good stuff. We had a good time there and everything. And here we are back at the Expo Hall here for the conference. And it's been exciting. So you've been in dispatch for about 1.5 years, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as we were talking in the beginning, this is your first conference, like, ever?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to start with that. What has this been like for you? Because I want to make sure that people know, whether it be a state chapter conference or a national one like this, there's a lot that can come out of it. There's a lot that you can get, whether it be, simply the networking or, anything else that comes out of it, all the sessions and everything else. What has it been like for you?
It's been amazing. Just seeing all the different technologies that's out there and that's available for dispatch and law and, fire. Just the overall safety part of every responder there is. That's probably been my favorite thing, is just seeing all of it, because in Marshall County, we don't have that type of technology, and our director now, Chris, he's trying to bring all of this up-to-date technology to Marshall. And so I can't wait for it to be implemented into our 911 dispatch.
Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of technology out there, a lot of different things. So I say this all the time, but I get jealous sometimes when I'm at stuff like this, or even virtually, only because when I was dispatching, it didn't have all this cool shit that that is going on. Like I would have to, and a lot of places still do this as well. But if there was someone who called in on a cell phone, and you didn't have a good location. Which a lot of people don't know that, when they call in on 911, the location isn't always there.
Yeah.
And it's not the greatest. It's not like pinpoint. It's not like TV.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. It's not like TV where it just automatically pinpoints. But, it would have to send we would fax. We would have to fax. That sounds so old.
We
to
still
say.
fax.
Yeah. So we'd have to fax out a form to one of the major carriers to say, can you see if you can get a better location from here or something? And then maybe they would be able to get you something, maybe not. It all would depend on just how their service was working.
Mm-hmm.
But now, all the technology, places still do, that. However, there are a lot of technology out there where you can pinpoint someone just like right where they're at, or you can text someone. It's like, damn it, I want to use this stuff too. Like, come on, I want to try this. This is cool stuff.
Yeah.
So for you all, like, are you doing, like texting and all of that as well?
Yes. Chris is actually, he brought all that to us, the texting 911, Rapid OS. That's an amazing feature.
Yeah.
We've had to send a lot of calls just by going off of Rapid because we didn't have an exact location. So it's a lot of the newest stuff, and even more when we get our 911 center, get in there. There's so much more that he's bringing to the table that is just amazing. And to get to see it for the first time here and him be like, this is what we're going to have in the new center. This is what we're going to have in the new center. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like a kid in a candy shop. You're just all excited.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because there is, you think about all the different scenarios, right? You think about all the different scenarios that come into 911, because anything can happen in 911. But to be able to have the technology to put towards it, to be able to find someone so much faster, or you've got a domestic that's going on, and all you hear is screaming in the background on a cell phone, and it's hitting in a spot where there just isn't a location. You can get that location, and you can start sending people out there until you get somebody on the line, which would be so much of a faster response than like when I was there. And it wasn't really that long ago when I left dispatch. It was 2013. So it wasn't that long ago. It was 8 years ago or so. But man, the technology started ramping up and everything. So yes, it's really cool to be able to have that. And also just to see you be excited to have that coming in and to be able to take advantage of it. That is very refreshing. So this is awesome. But how did you get into dispatching to begin with? Like, do you come from a family of public safety, or just kind of fall into it?
So literally since 2004, I've worked ground maintenance, mowing and weed eating. I had got a job at our park for our county, and when COVID hit, Chris was like, hey, would anybody from the park want to possibly step up and be able to help out if we need it? And I was like, I think I might like that. I was like, that might be pretty cool. And needless to say, I stayed. I never went back to the park. I loved it so much. I took a major pay cut to be able to do dispatching, but that's how much I loved it. I was infatuated with it. I wanted to learn as much as I could. I just want to keep learning and keep going up the ladder with it because I love it that much.
Wow. Okay. So there's this basically like a call to action to be able to pull other people in to see to help. What was that like for you? What was that process like for you then? So when you ended up making that transition, do you have to go through the the interview process as well, like everybody else, or because you were already an employee of like the county and all, they had all that information and they could just bring you in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they literally just Chris was like, come in, sit, with us, make sure it is something you want to do.
Oh, so you got to do a sit along.
So yes. I sat in the first day. I'm like, I'm sold. I want to do it. And he was like, okay, well, you're going to have to, I forget now which one I had to do first, but I had to do a certification right away. And he was like, as soon as you, pass that, we can get everything, the ball rolling, get you, learning stuff. As far as the learning and the training, because of being pulled in for COVID, I was literally just kind of like pushed out there. And it was like, try to grasp everything that you can. Let's do this. So like my training process was sped up a lot more than anybody else that would come in full time.
Yeah.
But within, I don't know, probably a month and a half, I started taking my first 911 call.
Oh man. Okay. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. So you jump in, you get your, you get to do your sit along, and just from what was it? If we can back up a little bit, what was it in those first few moments where you were just sold? Was it the just the environment, the calls that were coming in, stuff that you were listening to, or maybe a little bit of that adrenaline rush? Like what was it?
The adrenaline rush was the major.
Yeah.
I'm adrenaline junkie.
That is awesome.
I love stuff that just feeds my fire pretty much. Yeah. Just listening in, watching what all they do. I'm not gonna lie, whenever I actually got on a console and I was like, oh my gosh, Jessica, are you kidding me right now? Like, you seriously want to do this? So then like all the overwhelmingness started hitting me, and all the calls coming in and wanting to know about this and wanting to know about that. And I'm like, how am I ever going to get this? Like, how am I going to know, like, when I've got to send all 3 departments or all 4 and 5 departments? Like, I don't know if I can do this.
Well, okay. So how many people work at a time on?
We have 2 at a time.
2 at a time. Okay. Yeah. And then what is your schedule like? We were kind of talking about this in the beginning.
So our schedule right now is 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., and then 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
This is so crazy because I've never spoken to somebody who had that same schedule as myself when I first started out back in 2001 in Florida. So to hear this, it's cool, but it's also like, because I know what it's like. So for us, that midnight shift, we would work that for a month. I don't remember why, but we would work that for a month, and then we would go straight into that 6 to 2 again. And I remember thinking, there's got to be a better way, because I've been used to now, the 10 to 6 this whole time, and now I'm going back into the 6 to 2. So it was hard to do that. But so that's your schedule. You got 2 at a time and all, and a month and a half through training because it was accelerated. Basically, because you guys needed people. We had a point when I was in dispatch where we had something similar where everyone who was working, who was full-time, well, we only had full-time. I was the last one to come out that went from part-time to full-time, and then it was just all full-time. But all of us became CTOs. Like, that's how short-staffed we were. We had our certified training officers, or CTOs, but then the rest of us, they're just like, you're CTOs too, you're trainers. Everyone is going to train because we need to get people in here.
Yeah.
So that whole thing was an interesting time as well. So as you're talking about a lot of these calls coming in and thinking, why am I doing this? Do I really want to do this? I guess what is it? So for those who are watching and those who are listening as well, when you're sitting there, what is it that you're looking at? Like, how many monitors are there? How many keyboards? Just so that they can get an idea of what it is that you're looking at. And then, you've got then all of these calls and stuff that are coming in, and you're like, crap, am I going to be able to do this?
Yeah. So we've got 6 monitors, and then 2 keyboards, and then our phone also.
Yeah. Man. So did you did have like that moment where you're sitting there and I asked this and I'm imagining all of this as well because excuse me, choking on my spit. Jeez. When I had walked into the Central Dispatch, when I moved back home to Southwest Michigan, I remember walking in, there were 5 consoles, 3 people minimum, and then on the weekend there was 4. So I remember walking in and my trainer showing me around and looking at the dispatchers on their consoles and just seeing everything they're doing. They're on the phone. They're listening to the environment on the phone call. They're listening to the other side of the radio and what's going on there, yelling stuff over, typing stuff in, answering the radio for EMS and fire. And that was my oh shit moment. Like, what? Wait, what? Like, am I going to be able to do this? Because also at the same time, people are eating too.
Yeah.
So like, how are they doing this? So I can only imagine, as you're talking about this, it being kind of the same thing while you're sitting there like, what?
It does.
Man.
It does. It was very overwhelming. But then once I actually got into it and got the hang of everything, I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty easy. But I always feel like anybody in the dispatching world, they have to be part ADHD to be able to multitask on everything.
Yeah.
Because that's just, I've always felt like that. I'm partial ADHD. And so you just learn to multitask with
That's
everything.
right. Yeah. So have you already, so again, a year and a half, you got that, what I call dispatcher ear, where you're listening to every single thing. And I remember going home and there would be times where like I would hear everything that's going on and having a conversation with my family. And I would just like snap back to whoever it is that I'm talking to at the time. And they'd be like, are we here? And I would tell them almost verbatim exactly what they said. And they said, how did you do that? So it's my dispatcher. Like I was listening to you. I was listening to the kids fight. I could smell the food cooking and I could hear the TV, the neighbors on the other side. Like, I know everything that's going on, but it's hard to turn it off.
It is.
Do you find that the same thing?
Yes. It's funny that you brought that up because me and my mom literally just had this conversation not about a couple of weeks ago. She was talking to me. My dad walked in. My little girl, she's 3. She was wanting me. And so at the same time, like I'm trying to divert all, everything possible. And my mom's like, just forget it. She's like, you're not even listening to me. And I'm like, yeah, I was. I said, I could tell you everything that you just said. And she's like, oh, well then what did I say? And so then I repeated everything to her. And she's like, okay, I totally didn't think that she was paying attention to me.
Oh man. Yeah. That is, that's almost like having your own playback.
It is.
Yeah. From work, but it's just in our head, you know, we're doing it that way. And that is, it's fun, but it's also kind of a curse sometimes too.
It is.
Yeah, when you can't shut it off, and you got to try to find different ways to be able to do that. So going through your training and everything, you mentioned the month and a half. You start taking all these calls. Do you remember your first call or any of those earlier calls that were coming in?
I actually do. My very first call, it actually came in through the admit line, but it was a 911 call. A lady had walked in and found her mom dead. She was hysterical. Like, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I freaked for the first, and I turned around to the guy that was training me at the time, and I'm like, you've got to take over. I can't do this. And he was like, you're going to do it. And he said, turn around and do what you're supposed to do. And then it was just like something clicked in me, and I took over the call. Everything was fine. And then when I got off the phone, he was like, Jessica, she was already dead.
Right.
Like, there's nothing that you could have done. He was like, you just got to get in there and do it, be comforting to her and so forth. And so that was my very first call.
Wow. That's a tough one to jump right in. That's like, the dispatch god throwing you right in, like, hey, welcome to dispatch. Like this is just a taste of some of the calls that you're going to end up taking.
Because whenever I got off the phone, I mean, I started crying, and all I could think about was if that was me and I walked in and seen my mom, like how I would have reacted with that. And so with new dispatchers, that's stuff that you've got to take into perspective to be able to put in the back of your mind and not let those feelings show if you're really soft-hearted like that.
So did you find that hard as well to take, some of those calls and, for a long time, I was one of those dispatchers who buried my calls. So it was hard for me to talk to people. It was therapeutic to be able to write them out. And then, of course, to do, what we're doing here and sharing stories and everything. So for you, though, as you said, like having a soft heart and everything, some of those calls, of course, they're going to stick with you, and just listening and all of that. Are there any ways that you have found, especially for those who are listening and watching, to be able to kind of cope with some of these calls, or maybe even just talking it out, writing it down? Like, what are some ways, even like self-care, for yourself? It's a year and a half in, but you're learning and going through it. What are some of the things that you've done to kind of alleviate, I guess, some of that stress that comes with the job?
My big thing is talking about it. I've got a lot of our SO guys. I'm really close with a lot of them and a lot of their wives and so forth. So it helps to be able to talk about calls and talk about the incidents, because with them, I can share everything with them. And so that's really helped me with a lot of stuff, because if I have a hard call, I know I can reach out to them and talk to them about all of it. Others is definitely taking time to yourself. I wouldn't for the longest time, but that's also being a new mom. I felt like all my time was directed to her, and so I would never take care of myself. So definitely taking time to yourself, if it's going and getting a manicure or a pedicure or working out or, anything in that to relieve that stress and get your mind off of work.
And definitely, like you're saying, it's something that's outside of the public safety space. I loved, and I still do, for those who are watching or listening right now, I would love to go and hang out with all of the deputies, the other dispatchers that I worked with, and we would talk shop sometimes, and some of them would be like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we talking about work? Like, we shouldn't be. But we would be kind of sharing most of the the funny calls and stuff, but still it would come up and we would be talking about different things. So it was always good to be able to find an outlet of some sort that was outside of public safety, to be able to just kind of decompress and ease the mind a bit.
Yeah, it is.
So how's everything else been from that time? Like, again, you got this year and a half, you got this call that you had to do, this first one. How has like the team dynamic been? Because it's a way different from what you were doing before. But you obviously love it. You were all about it and everything after that first going in and stuff. So what has it been like to work with a team and really start building this camaraderie, this brotherhood and sisterhood of there in dispatch, the Thin Gold Line?
It's been really good. Just because no matter what, they always have your back. You get really close with your partner that you work with, and we all have a pretty tight relationship with all of us, and we know that no matter what, we can always lean on each other, and each other has our backs, from just being able to talk to each other to taking those calls. The other one picks up what the other one can't, and so it's nice to have that to lean on.
Right. Yeah, it's always good to have that that team dynamic. It's funny though, right? Because sometimes we're like a siblings, and sometimes we kind of get into it with each other. But when the phone rings, when there's a high priority call that comes on, and not even a high priority call, when any call comes in, everyone gets back together
Yeah.
and starts doing the shit like that they're supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
like a well-oiled machine. That is, and not just that too, but when you're in there just shooting the shit with each other and laughing and joking, and then the phone rings and whack, everybody stops
Yes.
immediately and pick up the phone. 911, where's your emergency? It's like,
Yep. Yep. And then as soon as you get off that call, you go right back in.
right. Yeah. It's like, all right. So, this is what we were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the call that you mentioned in the beginning, is that also, a call that kind of really has stuck with you, or have there been more, kind of tougher calls that you've been taking in this year and a half?
Yeah. There's been a couple more that I've had. I've had a 3-year-old that went through a barbed wire fence sledding. That one, it really hit me afterwards because I have a 3-year-old. And so all I could think about is just those little freak accidents that you're not expecting to happen. But that one was really hard. And then my big wake up one, because they always say you have that one call that's like your wake up call.
Right.
It's like, all right, you got to get your shit together. Like, this is real life. In our county, we do not have a lot of shootings.
Mm-hmm.
We had a call of road rage, and car shot at another vehicle, and it actually went through the door, shot the guy in the side, and it was transferred over from another county.
Whoa.
But it was in our county. And so I was talking to the guy that got shot, and I froze. Like, I literally froze because I was like, holy shit, I'm talking to the guy that's got shot. He is gurgling. Like, I froze. And I'm like, we don't have calls like these.
Right.
I mean, we have your normal calls that everybody gets. And that one there was like my major wake up call after that. And after that, it was just like I hit everything to a point on it. I didn't hesitate. I didn't freeze. I didn't, so forth. So it's hard when you do have those first wake up call.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, those I remember freezing up on one. It was the only one, and it was when I was in training, and it was a domestic, and it was right when it came in, and the CAD system that we had, I could not get in what I was trying to get in, and I remember looking over at my trainer, and I said, I think you're going to have to take over this one because I can't get this in, and she's like, just take a breath. You got this. She's like, I'm not doing it. You're going to do it. Similar to what you were telling me earlier. Yeah. And I'm glad she did that because it helped me build my confidence after that. Mm-hmm. And because I never did it again. I stayed on top of it, and it definitely helped out. So I can definitely relate there with you on calls like that. But man, once that happens, like you said, that wake-up call, you are paying attention to even more stuff than you thought before, like even little tiny, little nuggets of things. And but it helps, it helps mold you to be that much better of a dispatcher and call taker.
It does. I had a domestic call that was a full open line. I had no address, no nothing. Thank God for RapidOS, because I was like, it's pinning right here. This is all I've got. It is a full open line. I can hear screaming and yelling. And then about the time I said that, I could literally hear him start punching her and her screaming. And I could hear his fist hitting her face.
Oh, man.
And so that one there, it was a hard one, but I didn't freeze. The guys were on it. They got there. They were able to detain the guy immediately as soon as the door opened. And so those are big calls too, that you're just, some people are like, what do I do? Like, I don't. Yeah, and that's where you have to resort to the stuff that you have, your technology that you have.
It's, you describing this, that's one of those things as well, that when you hear the like you said, like the punching and everything else, sometimes, and I don't know if this is the same with you, but sometimes some of the calls that we take, there are little things that end up becoming triggers later on. It could be a similar sound, and you start thinking back to that call. Or, for myself, I took a call where a teenager had flipped their four-wheeler, and I was giving the parents instructions, or CPR instructions. One of the deputies gets out there, and I hear him giving CPR, and I didn't want to hang up. I couldn't hang up. I wanted to hear them say, the kid's okay, he's breathing again. But the thing that freaked me out a little bit was that I continued to hear him say, come on, buddy, come on, buddy, or something to that effect. And then years later, it was the week that I started the I Am 911 movement, and I started it with that story. And it was, I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler, hashtag I Am 911. And I was watching Stranger Things. I was watching one of the episodes on season 1. And the main character, one of the little kids, the kid who was missing, the sheriff deputy and the kid's mom find him, and the sheriff is giving CPR, and he's saying the exact same thing. And I just lost my shit. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is wrong with me? And then I realized this is exactly what it was that I was listening to, but now I'm visualizing it right here.
Yeah.
And, oh, man. And that's why I bring it up with triggers and stuff, because some of those calls, some of the things that we hear later on, it could be years from now, just like it was for me during that time. It was 3 years later. It ended up being a trigger.
Yeah, it does. A lot of things will bring you back to calls. Like yesterday in one of the classes that I was in, they was talking about, kids calling in and how to interact with kids and how to talk to them, and that you don't talk to them the same as an adult, and how much easier and gentler you need to take your voice to them. And it literally brought me back to a kid calling in for the dad because the dad was giving their mom CPR. And all the kid could tell me was, daddy's on top of mama, CPR. And it was literally everything that all I could have with, going on the call. And so there is triggers that brings you back to your, certain calls that you forget about. And just those one little things will pull you back to those calls.
Yeah, it took me a little bit sitting there to kind of just gather my thoughts, and then just move on. But it was one of the things that I ended up writing about, and I put out for others to read so that they could, I guess, just kind of take away a little bit from my experience, just in case something that they ever dealt with. But man, the triggers are real.
They are. And the thing that always gets me is people just saying, well, you're just a dispatcher. Like, you're not on the front line.
I hate that.
And I'm like, you guys don't realize what dispatchers go through mentally.
Yep.
Like, we don't get to see that call follow through. A lot of times we're left hanging. We don't know what the end result of things are. And our minds are triggered so weird that we have every bad thought possible that goes on. And so that's always one thing that I always try to stress to people, that mentally is a lot worse than actually seeing it in person.
So then I have a question, especially because you're a year and a half in, and I'm curious. So there is a lot of centers that are using video to 911. You got pictures and all this other stuff that's coming out. The biggest problem, right, and just kind of building on what you were saying, is the closure aspect, because the majority of the calls we don't know. But excuse me, for one of the calls that I had ended up taking, a good friend of mine who I worked with, her husband was one of the sergeants, and he worked the call that I had put out, and they asked if I was okay. And I said, well, yeah, of course I'm okay. And then they just kind of looked at me. I was like, okay, no, I'm not. And I said, I just need to know exactly what happened. So he came up, sat down with me, and we talked for about 30 or so minutes, told me exactly what happened. And I felt better. You know, I had that closure. But with video and pictures and all of this, do you think, and just your opinion on this, do you think that because of the fact that you'll be able to see a lot of stuff that's going on, even though it's, you know, pretty traumatic, and depending on how, you know, your center or any other center ends up bringing in that data that is coming in, whether it be, you know, video, pictures, whichever, do you think that because you know be able to actually visualize what it is that is going on, that is going to help with some of that closure?
I think for some it will.
Yeah.
For me personally, I know that it will. Others that I think it might affect some others, just because once they actually see that initial effect, that it could bring PTSD to them, or
Very true. Yeah.
you know, things like that. Especially ones that's not good with putting that in the back of their minds and in the back of their heads. That literally, that's a picture they're always going to see.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be embedded there. So, I mean, it could be, lack of a better way to say it, and no pun intended here, a double-edged sword, where, you know, it could be, of course, seen as some sort of closure, but also the fact that it's embedded in their brain. It's going to be there, and it's not just, you know, listening, because, you know, when, and you can, you know, probably agree with this as well, but when you've got calls coming in and you're listening, sometimes what you're listening to, what you're piecing together in your brain as a puzzle is not what is going on. It could be completely different, but we go on what it is that we're just listening to.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes, you know, these calls, you know, end up coming in, and the officer will get out there and they'll say, yeah, it wasn't that at all.
Yeah.
You know, there was a couple and they were doing this or that. We're like, oh, okay, it sounded like somebody was getting murdered. But all right. So, you know, we end up piecing together something that is worse. So it's hard to say, right?
It is.
With video and pictures,
It is.
to be able to completely visualize it versus what it is that you're putting together in your brain.
It is.
Man. So for the time that you've been here at this conference, this being your first conference, what are some of the things that you've seen so far, and what are you excited about for the rest of the time?
I'm excited for the next 2 days to get into the classes.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was able to do a couple of classes, but spent the majority of the day just in here checking out everything and, you know, just taking it all in, soaking it all in. But I'm really looking forward to a lot of the classes to see if there's anything that I can take in and take back.
Right.
With.
Excellent. As we go into the wrap up of this episode, you know, as you said, you've been working for a year and a half. So for those who are watching and listening, if you have any advice for those who are just starting out that might feel overwhelmed, or, you know, with some of the calls that are coming in, or maybe they feel as well, like, you know, when you first got in there thinking, what are you doing? Like, am I doing the right thing? From your experience, what is something that you would tell them to just, you know, keep going?
A lot of times though, I mean, dispatching is not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So if they feel like this is something that they just really are not interested in, once they get going, stop.
Yeah.
But if you feel like, you know, I'm going to do this, I want to do this, and they have that will drive power to want to do it, keep going.
Yeah.
Take all the learning that you can, all the training that is offered. There's so much free training out there that, you know, if they're companies and that, counties, whatever, can't afford the training. Do the training, get up to date with everything. Never go in with the attitude of, I know everything, because you will never know everything.
Right.
Every day, literally, I'm learning something new. And I know from here on out, every day I will still learn something new, because just even being in here talking to other dispatchers from other counties, other countries, other states, everything is so different. And so you always reaching out, you're always going to learn something from somebody. And to just keep it up, stay positive, have that peer support. You get down, talk to somebody. That is the big thing. Get it out.
Right.
Like you said, whether it's writing it down or talking to somebody, talking to a therapist or anything, make sure to get it out there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on this episode. This has been a lot of fun to get to know you and just kind of learn from your experience, but also the experience of being here, at a national conference for the first time, and everything that you're taking in, and just experiencing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And I want to thank the NINA conference I won the scholarship award. That's how I was able to come. And so, like I said, get out there, answer those emails, put in those, the grant scholarships, and if it's something that everybody wants to really do.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for being on. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches Podcast. A big shout out once again to Nina. Here we're at booth 1045. We're currently in the Expo Hall, and they are presenting and hosting us. Thank you once again, Nina. We're here for the 2021 National Native Conference in Columbus, Ohio. And this episode has been sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy. And if you're looking for any bonus content, you can check us out. And that is patreon.com/WTT podcast. And thank you so much to the patrons. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.